They say you should never meet your heroes. Nobody warns you about the opposite. Being the man who warned everyone, being ignored, and then watching the thing you predicted actually happen. A smokestack fell the wrong way in Hargrove, Ohio. It hit a hospital, and the only person who could have stopped it was standing in a parking lot holding his termination papers. I keep it in my wallet still. Not because I need it anymore. The certification lapsed 2 months after Hargrove, and I never renewed it. I keep it because it reminds me what it cost to be the one person in the room who knew what he was talking about. Controlled Demolition Specialist, Level IV. Issued by the National Demolition Association. My name, Raymond Kincaid, printed in that clean, official font. The holographic seal catching light at certain angles. The expiration date that came and went while I was sitting in a state investigator's office, explaining how a man gets fired for doing his job. It took me 9 years to earn that card. 9 years of working my way up from laborer, hauling debris, sweeping slag, breathing dust that tasted like metal and regret. 9 years of studying blast patterns, structural load theory, collapse mathematics. 9 years of sitting in motel rooms after 14-hour shifts, reading engineering manuals while the rest of the crew drank and played cards through the thin walls. I don't say that to sound noble. I say it because that's what it takes. That card in my wallet isn't a piece of plastic. It's 9 years of a man's one life. By the time Hargrove came around, I dropped 37 structures. Chimneys, towers, smokestacks, a decommissioned water tower outside Tulsa that the mayor wanted turned into a spectacle. Every single one went where it was supposed to go. Every single one fell clean. That's not bragging. That's the standard. That's what the card means. You learn early in this work that gravity is the real demolition crew. You don't knock something down. You convince it to fall. You read the structure, find its language, understand which way it wants to go. Then you use explosives to guide it. A nudge, not a shove. A whisper, not a shout. And if the conditions aren't right, if the wind is wrong, if the ground is soft on one side, if the structure has hidden weaknesses, you stop. You wait. Because gravity doesn't care about your schedule. Gravity doesn't care about your budget. Gravity takes that building exactly where the physics tell it to go. And if you're not there to guide it, it goes wherever it pleases. That card in my wallet meant I was the one who decided when the conditions were right. It meant I was the one Dale Purcell decided to fire. The Hargrove smokestack stood on the edge of what used to be the Meridian Coal and Power Plant. 180 feet of reinforced concrete, built in 1962, decommissioned in 2019. The city had bought the land for a commercial development, strip mall maybe, or a housing tract. The stack had to come down before the contractors could break ground. 180 feet. That's a tall man standing on top of another tall man stacked 18 times. From the base, it looked like a gray finger pointing at the sky, stained dark on one side from decades of exhaust. Pigeons roosted in the cap. Weeds grew in the cracks around the foundation. The whole thing had that dead industry feeling, a monument to something that used to matter, now just taking up space. The job should have been straightforward. Cut the base charges on the north side, weaken the structure along a clean line, and let the stack fall north into the empty lot where the cooling towers used to stand. A clean drop zone, 200 yards of nothing but dirt and old concrete slabs. Textbook, except for what sat on the south side. Hargrove Regional Medical Center, 240 beds, emergency room, pediatric wing, a birthing center that had opened just 8 months before the demo contract was signed. The stack was supposed to fall north, away from a hospital, but the distance between the base and the hospital's north wall was only 312 feet. I measured it myself. 312 feet between 180 feet of falling concrete and a building full of people who couldn't run, patients in beds, babies in the NICU, surgeons in the middle of operations. The math works like this. A stack that tall, falling full length, covers 180 feet of ground in the direction it falls. That leaves 132 feet of margin. Enough if it goes exactly where you tell it, not enough if it doesn't. I signed off on the job because the math said it was possible. The drop zone was clear, the structure was sound enough to guide, and I'd done stacks this tall with margins this tight before. It wasn't reckless. It was precision work, and precision work requires precision conditions. I told Dalen in the first planning meeting, I said it in the second. I wrote it in the pre-blast assessment report. Wind conditions at time of detonation must not exceed 12 miles per hour from the south or southeast. Any crosswind pushing the stack toward the hospital exceeds safe parameters. Delay protocols must be in effect. He signed the report. I watched him do it. October 14th, Implosion Day. I was on site at 5 in the morning. The detonation was scheduled for 7, early enough to beat the Sunday crowds, late enough for daylight so the camera crews could get their footage. The city liked a spectacle. Demolitions brought people out. They set up a viewing area a quarter-mile to the east, behind a line of Jersey barriers. Local news had been promoting it for a week. Watch Hargrove's old stack come down. The air was still when I arrived. Cold, dense, the kind of October stillness that feels held in place by something bigger than weather. I checked the anemometer at the base of the stack. 4 miles per hour, northwest. Perfect. The stack would fall north, and the wind would push it further into the drop zone. I radioed Dale, who was in the command trailer near the viewing area. Conditions are green. We're good to go at 7. Copy that, he said. At 6:15, I checked again. 6 miles per hour, shifting to the west. Still fine. Still within parameters. I felt that quiet hum I always feel before a drop. Not nervous, not excited, just ready. The charges were set. The crew had done their work. Toma Velik had checked the blast caps himself, and Toma didn't miss things. At 6:40, the anemometer twitched. I watched the needle swing. 9 miles per hour. Southwest. I stepped away from the stack and checked the portable unit I'd mounted on the equipment truck. Same reading. 9 miles per hour, and the direction was crawling. Southwest, sliding toward south-southwest. I radioed Dale again. Wind shifting. 9 miles per hour southwest. It's moving. If it hits south, we're outside parameters. There was a pause, and his voice, flat and unhurried. 9's still under 12. We're 20 minutes out. The limit is 12 from the south or southeast. It's coming from the southwest and moving. In 20 minutes, it could be a direct crosswind pushing the stack toward the hospital. I want to hold. Reassess at 7:15. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear the noise of the viewing area behind him. People gathering, a news anchor doing a live stand-up. The crowd had come for a show. Kincaid, we've got 300 people in that viewing area. We've got news crews from 2 stations. We've got the city council expecting this stack down by 8 so they can start their press tour. You're telling me you want to delay because the wind might shift. I'm telling you I want to delay because the wind is shifting right now. I'm watching it happen. 9 miles per hour, Ray. That's a gentle breeze, pushing toward a hospital, with 132 feet of margin. The radio crackled. When he spoke again, his voice had that tone, the one managers get when they've already made up their mind and are just looking for a way to say it that sounds reasonable. Demo crew, don't delay for wind. We're going at 7. I didn't argue. That's not something I'm proud of or ashamed of. It's just a fact. In the moment, standing at the base of that stack, with the anemometer in my hand and the wind crawling south, I didn't argue. I stated my position and waited for the response I already knew was coming. Then, I'm pulling my certification. This drop doesn't go without my sign-off. And I'm not signing off on a southwest wind trending south with a hospital 300 feet away. Silence on the radio. 10 seconds. 15. When Dale's voice came back, it wasn't on the open channel. It was on the private line, just the 2 of us. Ray, listen to me carefully. You are not pulling anything. You are going to confirm green conditions, and we are going to drop this stack at 7 o'clock, like we told the city, like we told the networks, like we told every person standing in that viewing area waiting for a show. Do you understand me? No, 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 I won't confirm green. The conditions aren't green, they're yellow and trending red. Then I'll confirm them myself. You don't have the certification, Dale. You can't confirm blast conditions. That's federal regulation. You need a level I fee on site to sign off. I had one on site until about 30 seconds ago. It took me a moment to understand what he meant. You're firing me. I'm releasing you from the project. Effective immediately. Your services are no longer required. I'll document that you abandoned the site voluntarily. Clean up the paper trail later. Toma can confirm the conditions. He's been doing this long enough. Toma doesn't have the certification. Toma has 20 years of experience, which is worth more than a card in your wallet. Now clear out. You got 5 minutes before I call security. I stood there for a long time. Not 5 minutes, maybe 2. The wind pressed against my face, and I could feel it shifting, the way you feel a tide change, southwest, south. I felt it before the anemometer confirmed it. I walked to my truck. I put my gear in the cab. I drove past the viewing area, past the news vans, past the families with coffee cups and phones raised, ready to capture the bang. Nobody looked at me twice. Why would they? I was just a man leaving early. I drove to the Walmart parking lot on Grant Avenue, 2.5 miles from the site, close enough to hear the detonation, far enough that I couldn't see the stack. I sat in the truck with the engine off and the radio on. Dale's voice crackled through, calm and commanding, playing the role he'd been hired to play. All personnel, final check. Charges are live. Detonation in 12 minutes. Toma's voice came through. Charges confirmed. Caps intact. Sequence is green. There was no mention of wind conditions. No mention of the certification hold. No mention of the certification hold. No mention of the man who'd been removed from the site. Toma read the checklist like it was any other day, and I understood something in that moment that I hadn't fully grasped before. Toma wasn't going to stop it. Neither was anyone else. The crew trusted the system, and the system was Dale. Dale had decided the stack was coming down at 7, and a man with a card in his wallet had been the only thing standing in the way of that decision. Now that man was sitting in a Walmart parking lot holding a termination he hadn't even received on paper. I thought about calling someone. The city, the hospital, a hotline. But who do you call at 6:50 on a Sunday morning to tell them a demolition is about to go wrong? What proof do you have? You're a man who was just fired. A man who, according to the paperwork Dale would file, walked off the job. A disgruntled employee with a grievance, not a prophet with a warning. I turned the radio off. Then I turned it back on. I could not listen. The countdown began. Detonation in 10 minutes. I gripped the steering wheel and watched the clock on the dashboard. 6:50. The sun was up but barely pale light, the kind that makes everything look like it's holding its breath. Detonation in 5 minutes. All personnel to safe zones. I closed my eyes. In my mind, I could see the stack. I could see the charges along the base. I'd placed them myself 2 days before with Toma handing me caps from the orange crate. Clean cuts. North-facing notches. The stack wanted to fall north. The structure leaned that way naturally, the concrete slightly thicker on the south side from decades of heat expansion. The charges would guide it. They were designed to guide it. But charges guide, they don't force. A strong enough crosswind pushes the mass as it falls. Not much. Not enough to matter on a wide-open site with a quarter-mile of clearance, but on a site with 132 feet of margin. A 10-mile-per-hour gust from the south hitting 180 feet of falling concrete broadside could shift the drop point by 30 feet. Maybe more. Maybe enough. Detonation in 2 minutes. Final radio silence. The radio went dead. Just static. Then nothing. I sat in the silence of my truck and listened to my own breathing. At 7 o'clock, I felt it before I heard it. A vibration in the ground, low and deep, the way thunder feels when it's inside your chest. Then the sound. A crack. Sharp and final, like the world breaking a bone. A pause. Then the roar. Concrete and steel giving way, 180 feet of structure surrendering to gravity, the sound of something massive falling through air. It should have taken 6 seconds. A stack that tall, free-falling, hits the ground in about 6 seconds. I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The roar didn't stop. It changed. It went from the clean rumble of a planned collapse to something wilder, a grinding, tearing sound that I'd never heard before in 37 drops. That sound meant the structure wasn't falling as one piece. It meant the base had sheared unevenly. It meant the wind had gotten under it, or the charges had fired out of sequence, or something had gone wrong. Then the siren started, not the demo crew's all-clear siren. These were emergency sirens, ambulances, fire trucks, a whole chorus of them, rising up from the direction of Hargrove, from the direction of the hospital, from the direction I'd been warning about since 6:40 that morning. I turned the truck on. I pulled out of the parking lot. I drove toward the sound. I couldn't get close. The police had already sealed off a 4-block radius around the site, and every road I turned down had a cruiser parked across it, lights flashing, an officer standing in the road waving people back. I parked 3 blocks north of the hospital and got out. The dust was everywhere. Fine gray powder coating car hoods, sidewalks, the leaves on the oak trees that lined the residential streets. It looked like snow that had fallen wrong. Not white, not clean, just gray and heavy and wrong. People were standing on their porches in bathrobes and slippers, staring south toward the cloud. Some had phones to their ears. Some just stood there with their mouths open. I walked. I didn't have a plan. I just walked toward where the dust was thickest, toward where the sirens were loudest. A firefighter stopped me at the corner of Birch and Hargrove Avenue. "Sir, you can't go further. Emergency zone." I was on the demo crew. It was the first time I'd spoken since the parking lot, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "I need to see." He looked at me hard, searching, and then something shifted in his expression. Maybe it was the way I said it. Maybe it was the dust on my boots or the way my hands were shaking. He stepped aside. No further than the church parking lot. You'll be able to see from there. I could see. The stack had fallen south. Not a little south. Not a drift, not a nudge. It had gone almost directly south, like a tree felled the wrong way by a careless logger. The base was still standing, a jagged stump, maybe 30 feet of concrete shearing off at an angle I recognized immediately. That angle meant the north charges had fired, but the structure had twisted as it fell, the wind catching the upper section like a sail and pulling the mast sideways. 180 feet of reinforced concrete had swung across those 312 feet and come down on the north wing of Hargrove Regional Medical Center. The north wing, the pediatric wing. I could see where the stack had hit, a gash in the roof. The wall collapsed inward, debris spilling into what had been a building and was now a wound. Emergency lights flickered inside. Flashlights moved behind broken windows. The dust was so thick around the impact zone that it looked like fog, and through it, I could see the shapes of people running. Firefighters in yellow coats, paramedics with stretchers, nurses in scrubs, still marked with the morning's coffee stains. Someone was screaming. Not one person. A sound that rose from the scene like heat from asphalt, a collective voice of shock and pain and confusion that blended into one sustained note. I stood in that church parking lot and I watched, and something inside me broke clean through. Not my spirit. Not my will. Something smaller and more essential. The thing that had let me sleep well after 37 drops. The quiet confidence that I was a man who did his job right and kept people safe. That thing cracked. I felt it go. I had told them exactly this would happen, and I was standing in a church parking lot watching it happen anyway. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I sat in my truck outside the police line and listened to the radio. Not the demo channel anymore, but the local station. The morning hosts had abandoned their usual banter. A reporter was on scene, her voice shaking, describing what she could see from the viewing area that had become a staging ground for emergency vehicles. The stack fell. It fell the wrong direction. It hit the hospital. We can see the north side of the building. There's significant structural damage. Ambulances are arriving from Franklin County and Medford. They're transporting patients out. I can see stretchers. Multiple stretchers. I drove to a diner on Route 12. I don't remember choosing it. I just ended up there, sitting in a booth by the window, a cup of coffee in front of me that I never touched. The television above the counter was on. The local news had broken into their morning broadcast. A helicopter shot aerial footage of the hospital, the stack lying across the roof like a gray arm reaching for something it shouldn't have touched. The reporter on the ground was saying words I couldn't process. Structural collapse, pediatric wing, evacuation underway, number of injured unknown. A woman at the counter gasped. The cook came out from behind the grill and stood next to her, both of them staring up at the screen. Someone at another booth was crying. A young woman with her phone pressed to her ear saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Mom, just tell me you're okay." I sat there and I felt every single one of my 37 clean drops. I felt them like weights on a scale. And on the other side was this one wrong drop, one stack that fell the wrong way, one hospital full of people who didn't know they were in danger because the man who knew had been sent home. The numbers came in over the next few hours. I heard them on the radio, on the television, from the people at the diner who talked and cried and called their families. 14 injured, 3 critical, a nurse, a 5-year-old boy, and a grandmother who'd been visiting her newborn granddaughter in the birthing center. The birthing center that had opened 8 months ago. The birthing center that was 2 floors below where the stack had come through the roof. No deaths, not that day. That word, no deaths, became something people clung to, like a life raft in a sea of wreckage. I couldn't cling to it. 14 injured. 3 critical. A pediatric wing crushed. A hospital that served a town of 20,000 people, now partially destroyed. Its emergency room overwhelmed with its own patients. I paid for the coffee I never drank. I drove home. I sat on the edge of my bed and I looked at the wall and I thought about the 5-year-old boy. I didn't know his name. I didn't need to. I could see him. Every 5-year-old I'd ever known, every kid I'd ever seen run across a parking lot, or swing a backpack over one shoulder, or laugh at something only a child finds funny. That boy was in critical condition because the wind was blowing from the south and a man named Dale Purcell didn't want to wait 15 minutes. I put my face in my hands and I stayed there for a long time. The grief wasn't clean. It wasn't the kind you feel when someone dies and you can direct it somewhere, toward a disease, toward fate, toward God. This grief was tangled up with fury and guilt and the uselessness of having been right. I had warned him. I had been removed. Those two facts lived in the same space, and they didn't cancel each other out. They multiplied. 4 days. That's how long it took. 4 days of not sleeping, not eating right, sitting in my house with the curtains drawn, fielding calls from my union rep, and 2 lawyers who'd heard about the firing and smelled a wrongful termination case. I didn't return their calls. I wasn't interested in getting my job back. I wasn't interested in a settlement. I was interested in the 5-year-old boy, whose name I now knew. Marcus Beale, age 5, fractured skull, still in intensive care, listed as critical but stable. On the 4th day, my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. A woman's voice. "Mr. Kincaid, my name is Lindsay Marsh. I'm a safety investigator with the Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Industrial Safety. I've been assigned to the Hargrove smokestack incident. I'd like to speak with you." My stomach dropped. Not because I was afraid, because the call I'd been dreading and waiting for had finally come, and now it was real in a way it hadn't been before. "I'm available." Not on the phone, in person. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., at the Hargrove Municipal Building. Can you be there?" "I'll be there. I'll be there." A pause. "Mr. Kincaid, I've reviewed the preliminary file. I've seen the blast plan, the wind data, and the personnel roster. I notice a gap. The certified demolition specialist listed on the pre-blast assessment, Raymond Kincaid, Level 4, was not on site at the time of detonation. I'd like to understand why. You'd like to understand why I wasn't there. I'd like to understand the full picture. That includes where you were, why you were there, and what you knew before you left. I'll bring my certification. I'll bring the wind logs, and I'll bring the termination order if I can get a copy." Another pause. Longer this time. When she spoke, her voice was careful and measured. "You were terminated that morning, approximately 20 minutes before detonation, by the project manager, Dale Purcell, for refusing to confirm green conditions when the wind exceeded safe parameters." "I see. Thank you, Mr. Kincaid. I'll see you tomorrow." She hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand and felt something shift. Not relief, not hope, just a sense that the wheel had started turning. Something was in motion now that wasn't up to Dale Purcell or his corporate overlords, or the city council's press tour schedule. It was a state investigator with a gap in her file and a man who could fill it. I pulled the card from my wallet. Controlled Demolition Specialist, Level IV. Raymond Kincaid. The holographic seal caught the light from the window I'd been keeping the curtains closed over. I opened the curtains. The daylight came in, and it didn't feel like mercy. It felt like a reckoning. The meeting room at the Hargrove Municipal Building was small and fluorescent, the kind of room where nothing good happens. Drop ceiling, gray table, 4 chairs, a water pitcher no one touched. Lindsay Marsh was already there when I arrived. She was younger than her voice had sounded on the phone. 38, maybe, with a narrow face and dark eyes that moved over everything like they were cataloging it for later. A folder sat open in front of her. A recorder sat next to it. "Mr. Kincaid, thank you for coming." She gestured to the chair across from her. "This is being recorded. Is that acceptable?" "It is." She nodded. "I'm going to walk through what I know, and I'd like you to fill in the gaps. Correct anything I get wrong." She looked down at the folder. The Hargrove smokestack implosion was contracted to Meridian Demolition Services, a subsidiary of Corvus Construction Group. The project manager was Dale Purcell. The certified demolition specialist on the pre-blast assessment was Raymond Kincaid, Level IV NDA certified. The blast was scheduled for 7 a.m. October 14th. The stack fell south instead of north, striking the north wing of Hargrove Regional Medical Center. 14 injured, 3 critical. She looked up. "That's what I know. What I don't know is where you were." I was in a Walmart parking lot on Grant Avenue. Why? Because Dale Purcell fired me at approximately 6:40 a.m., roughly 20 minutes before detonation. Her expression didn't change, but her pen moved. On what grounds? Refusing to confirm green conditions. The wind had shifted southwest and was trending south. My parameters were clear. No detonation with wind from the south or southeast exceeding 12 miles per hour. The wind was at 9 and climbing the direction was moving toward a direct crosswind, pushing the stack toward the hospital. I recommended a 15-minute hold to reassess. He said, "Demo crew don't delay for wind." I told him I wouldn't sign off. He terminated me and said he'd confirm the conditions himself or have Toma Valek do it. Toma Valek. Senior crew member, 20 years experience. Correct, but no Level IV certification. No certification at all. Toma is a good man and a careful worker, but he's not qualified to assess wind parameters for a controlled drop. That's not a knock on him, it's a fact of the licensing structure. The only person on that site who could legally confirm blast conditions was me. And when you were removed, no one else could legally confirm. No one. She wrote that down. Then she looked at me with those cataloging eyes. Mr. Fack Kincaid, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to answer carefully. Do you have documentation of the termination? I have the wind logs from both anemometers, the base unit and my portable. Both show the shift, beginning at approximately 6:40, trending south by 6:50. I downloaded the data from the portable unit before I left the site. The base unit should still have its internal log, if it wasn't damaged in the drop. I've already pulled the base unit log. It confirms your account. She closed the folder. What I don't have is the termination order. Dale said he'd document that I abandoned the site voluntarily. That's what he'll have filed. That is, in fact, what the personnel record states. Employee, voluntarily departed site without authorization. Signed by Dale Purcell, time-stamped 7:05 a.m. He fired me at 6:40. He filed it at 7:05, 5 minutes after the stack fell. Lindsay Marsh looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, I have one more interview today. Toma Velik. He called me yesterday. He wants to talk. I felt something move in my chest. Not hope exactly, something closer to recognition. Toma, who'd said nothing when I was fired. Toma, who'd read the checklist like it was any other day. Toma, who'd been carrying the same silence I'd been carrying, only his had a different weight to it. Good, I said. Toma saw everything. The investigation took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of depositions, psych visits, engineering reviews, and a slow, methodical unwinding of every lie Dale Purcell had built around that morning. The wind logs confirmed what I'd said. The base unit anemometer showed the shift beginning at 6:38, reaching 9 miles per hour from the southwest by 6:42 and hitting 11 from the south-southwest by 6:52, 8 minutes before detonation. The pre-blast assessment, signed by Dale himself, stated the parameters clearly. No blast above 12 miles per hour from the south or southeast. The wind had been within the letter of the limit, but outside the spirit, trending directly toward the danger zone, and I'd flagged it. But the real evidence was the personnel file. Dale's termination order, time-stamped at 7:05, claimed I'd abandoned the site voluntarily. Thomas' testimony, given under oath, in a room not unlike the one where I'd sat with Lindsay Marsh, dismantled that. He told them about the radio call. He told them about Dale's voice on the private channel. He told them about the 5-minute warning, the threat of security, and the way I'd walked to my truck without another word because there was nothing left to say. He told them he should have stopped it. He told them he should have stopped it. He told them that was his burden to carry. Dale Purcell was charged with criminal negligence, reckless endangerment, and falsification of safety records. Corvus Construction Group was hit with a civil suit by the hospital, a state fine that made the front page of the Hargrove Herald, and an OSHA investigation that shut down their demolition division for 8 months. The city council canceled the press tour. I saw Dale once after the charges were filed. It was in the hallway of the county courthouse, during a recess in the preliminary hearing. He was coming out of a conference room with his lawyer, and I was waiting on a bench outside the investigator's office. Our eyes met. He looked smaller. Not physically. He was the same broad-shouldered man with the square jaw and the voice that filled the room. But something behind his eyes had collapsed. The certainty was gone. The schedule worship, the confidence that a man with a clipboard could outthink the wind, all of it had been stripped away, and what was left was a man who knew what he'd done. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. He looked at me, and I looked at him, and in that silence was everything. The wind, the wind, the firing, the stack, the hospital, the 5-year-old boy named Marcus Beale who'd come out of intensive care 3 weeks after the collapse, with a scar along his hairline and a future that would never be quite the same. Dale opened his mouth. Then he closed it. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder and guided him down the hall. I sat on that bench and felt nothing that resembled satisfaction. The weight was still there. It would always be there, but it was shared now. Not just mine, not just Toma's, but where it belonged. On the man who'd chosen a schedule over a warning. On the system that had let him make that choice. Marcus Beale went home 51 days after the stack fell. The Hargrove Herald ran a photo of him on the front page, a small boy with a bandage around his head, sitting in a wheelchair, holding a stuffed dinosaur someone from the fire department had given him. He was smiling. The caption said he was expected to make a full recovery. I cut that photo out and put it in my wallet, next to the card. The card that lapsed. The card I never renewed. People ask me sometimes, the few people who know the whole story, whether I feel vindicated. Whether the investigation, the charges, the public exposure of what Dale Purcell did gave me closure. They expect me to say yes. They expect me to say that justice was served, that the truth came out, that the system worked. I don't say any of that. What I say is this: I was right. And being right didn't save Marcus Beale's skull from fracturing. It didn't save his mother from 51 days of sleeping in a hospital chair. It didn't save the nurses who ran through debris carrying patients, or the grandmother who had a heart attack from the shock, or the town that lost its hospital wing for 9 months while it was rebuilt. What I carry is not vindication. It's the knowledge that I did everything I could, and it wasn't enough. Not because I failed, but because one man with a schedule and a title decided that my expertise was less important in his timeline. That's the weight. That's the thing I'll carry for the rest of my life. Not guilt. I know I'm not guilty, but grief. Grief for a world where a man can do his job perfectly and still watch a hospital fall. I don't do demolition work anymore. I teach. A trade school in Columbus, structural safety, last theory, the mathematics of how things fall. My students are young, mostly kids who think explosions are cool and don't yet understand that the most important thing they'll ever learn is when not to push the button. On the first day of every semester, I show them the card. I tell them what it took to earn it. And then I tell them about the morning I was fired for using it. They listen. They always listen. And maybe that's the only thing that makes the weight feel lighter. Not gone, never gone, but lighter. Knowing that somewhere, sometime, one of these kids will be standing on a site with the wind shifting and a boss telling them to go, and they'll remember my story and they'll say no. That's what I carry. That's what it's for. If you could relate to this story, then you understand something I learned the hardest way possible. Doing the right thing doesn't always mean stopping the worst thing from happening. Sometimes it means speaking the truth, being ignored, watching the disaster unfold, and then carrying that truth forward so someone else doesn't have to learn it the way you did. Expertise matters. Certification exists for a reason. And no schedule, no press tour, no viewing crowd is worth a single life. If you've ever been the person who warned everyone and wasn't heard, I see you. You were right, and I'm sorry that wasn't enough.